Cleveland is currently facing a defining scenario. How does an elite defense maintain its championship standard when its ultimate leader departs? We must confront this following a confirmed franchise-altering trade. Our legendary defensive cornerstone has confirmed his departure from our team to another franchise, while a spectacular young defensive rookie of the year confirmed his arrival to our roster from his previous team. Recently, one of our rising defensive linemen shared how this massive transition is truly impacting the locker room. What does this new defensive era mean? Share your thoughts below, subscribe, and let's analyze this pivotal moment. The seismic shift involving the departure of Myles Garrett from the Cleveland Browns is a narrative that fundamentally alters the trajectory of this franchise, leaving fans and players alike to grapple with a new, uncertain reality. As I sit here reflecting on the gravity of this news, it is impossible to ignore the genuine, raw emotion expressed by Alex Wright during Wednesday's OTA session. When a pillar of a defense, a transformative, once-in-a-generation talent like Garrett is removed from the equation, the impact isn't just felt in the stat sheet or the loss of double-digit sacks, it is felt in the soul of the locker room. Wright's candid admission about being in denial, about seeing the notifications from national insiders, and needing a moment to process the reality, perfectly captures the communal shock experienced by every member of the Dawg Pound. This wasn't just a transaction, it was the closing of a chapter that defined Cleveland football for nearly a decade. We have to consider what Myles Garrett truly represented for this organization beyond his undeniable prowess as a pass rusher. He was the anchor of the culture, a player who embodied the grit and the standard that the current coaching staff worked tirelessly to instill. When Wright talks about using Garrett as a sponge for 4 years, he is describing the unspoken transfer of knowledge that keeps a championship caliber team rolling. It is the veteran teaching the apprentice how to watch film, how to prep the body, and how to carry oneself with the expectation of excellence. When that mentor is suddenly wearing a different jersey, the psychological adjustment for the younger core of this defense is monumental. It forces a sudden maturation. You can hear it in Wright's voice. The transition from being the pupil to recognizing that he and others like him are now the ones responsible for upholding the standard that 95 established long ago. The arrival of Jared Verse brings a fascinating layer to this transition. Let's be clear, the Browns front office did not choose to replace a legend with a mediocrity. They went out and secured a player in Verse who possesses the pedigree, the intensity, and the raw physical gifts to potentially fill a massive void. Verse is a dog, as Wright so aptly put it, and his immediate comfort with the defensive scheme signals that this team isn't planning a rebuild. They are planning a pivot. But can any single player, no matter how talented or how high the draft ceiling, replicate the gravitational pull of Myles Garrett? That is the million-dollar question that will define the Browns' 2024 season. It's not just about replicating the pressure on the quarterback. It's about replicating the fear Garrett instilled in offensive coordinators every single Sunday. What fascinates me about the current state of this roster is the shift in internal responsibility. Alex Wright's assertion that somebody has to take charge is the most encouraging sign coming out of Berea. It suggests that the culture hasn't crumbled, but rather it is being tested. True leadership isn't just present when the stars are aligned and the leaders are in place. It is defined by what happens when the foundation is shaken. If this defensive line, led by a reinvigorated Wright and supported by the new energy of Verse, can maintain its high-octane pressure and keep the standards of practice high, then the Browns might just prove that their defensive identity is systemic rather than individual. Yet, we must ask ourselves, is it realistic to expect a defensive unit to maintain elite status immediately following the loss of its alpha? The history of the NFL is littered with teams that lost their identity when their superstar departed. The burden is now on the coaching staff to cultivate that collective mindset. Think about the strategic implications here. Opposing offenses have spent years game planning specifically to negate Garrett. They double-teamed him, chipped him with tight ends, and funneled everything away from his side of the field. Without him, the schematic approach changes entirely. Does the defense become more aggressive with stunts and blitz packages? Do they rely more on the depth and rotation of the defensive line to manufacture pressure? This is where the coaching staff earns their keep. We are moving from a Garrett-centric defensive philosophy to a more balanced, aggressive, and perhaps less predictable approach. It is a dangerous transition, but if executed correctly, it could make the Browns a more well-rounded team. The challenge is ensuring that the intensity level, the "if I don't see something I like, we start the rep over" mentality, does not dissipate. I'm looking at this situation through the lens of a franchise that has spent years climbing out of the basement of the league. And I am reminded that every great team eventually faces the moment where their stars transition out. The measure of success for this year won't be whether they perfectly replace the production of one man. It will be whether they can collectively elevate their play to offset his absence. When Wright says they won't let the standard drop, he's expressing a sentiment that will be tested in week 1. We know the talent is there. We know the coaching staff has the vision. But the X factor is the internal drive of players like Wright to step into a leadership vacuum. Is he ready to be the vocal leader, the man who stops practice, the man who holds the room accountable? That is the next step in his professional evolution. Furthermore, we need to consider how this affects the fan base's expectations. We have lived through the lean years, and Garrett was the shining light during those times. Losing him hurts because he was a symbol of hope. To move forward, the team needs to generate new heroes. Jared Verse has the personality and the playing style to capture the imagination of Cleveland, but he has to perform. He has to step onto that field and demand respect. The fans are resilient, but they are also perceptive. They will know within the first few drives of the season whether this defense has the same bite as the one from last year. This is not just a game, it is an identity crisis that needs a victory to resolve. The upcoming season is now a referendum on whether the Browns are truly a championship contender or a team that was dependent on the singular brilliance of one man. I lean toward the former, simply because of the depth of the talent in the front seven. If they can get production by committee, if they can harness the hunger of players who were previously overshadowed, the narrative of this trade could shift from a tragedy to a triumphant evolution. But we must be honest about the risks. The league is unforgiving. If the defense struggles early, the what-if scenarios regarding the trade will grow into a cacophony of criticism. The pressure is immense, not just on the players, but on the decision-makers who deem this move necessary for the long-term health of the salary cap and the roster. Ultimately, the departure of Myles Garrett is a harsh reminder of the business side of the National Football League, a reality that Alex Wright and his teammates are learning in real time. It is a cold, calculated, and often painful process, but it is the reality of the game. The main consequence of this news is that the Cleveland Browns are entering a high-stakes period of transition where their defensive identity must be recreated rather than sustained. The loss is profound, but the opportunity for new voices to emerge and for the defense to forge a new collective strength is equally significant. As fans, we watch, we speculate, and we wait for the evidence on the field. Will this team rise to meet the challenge? Or will the loss of a legend be too much to overcome? The answer will be written in the dirt of the trenches this coming season. We are entering a phase where the intangibles, chemistry, leadership, and mental toughness, will carry as much weight as 40-yard dash times and sack totals. If this defense can maintain its identity without its cornerstone, it will be a testament to the culture that has been built over the past several years. It is a story of resilience that is still being written, and I, for one, am eager to see how the next chapter plays out. As we continue to break down every nuance of this transition, from the practice fields to the game day adjustments, I want to make sure you are kept informed with the deepest, most honest analysis possible. If you appreciate this kind of deep dive look at the behind the scenes reality of the Cleveland Browns, please make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button to help spread the word to other fans, and follow along as we continue to track how this season develops. There is plenty more to analyze, and I'll be right here covering every single snap of this new era for your Browns. Stay locked in, because the real test is just around the corner, and we are going to navigate it together, one practice, one game, and one analytical breakdown at a time. The standard remains the standard, no matter who is lining up on the edge. Let's see what this team is made of.